Welcome back to another video in this series. Today we're going to be installing the Kali Linux operating system. In the last video we created a Kali Linux bootable USB drive. If you followed along, you should now have rebooted your machine and selected the USB drive from the boot options. If all of that went smoothly, you should now be greeted with the screen in front of you. So the first thing we're going to do is select graphical install. Select the appropriate language. I'm going to select English. Select your location. I'm going to select United Kingdom. Configure your keyboard layout. My keyboard is configured for British English. Now enter a host name. I'm going to leave that as Kali. Enter a domain name. I'm going to leave that blank. Set a root password. Please set this to a strong password as it is for your root account. We're now going to partition the disk. It's really important that you get this right. So before we start partitioning the drive, I think it's best to give you a little bit of understanding of why it needs to be done in this particular way. So the first thing we're going to do is create a swap area. If you're technically minded, that's the equivalent of virtual memory, essentially a section of the hard drive which acts like normal RAM. The second thing we're going to do is create a partition to house the operating system and the files that it's going to be using. So let's go ahead and do that. Select manual. Now we're going to partition the disk. You need to select the partition you wish to configure. Remember, a few videos ago we shrunk the hard drive by 30 GB to house the Kali Linux operating system. You need to select that partition. It should be fairly apparent from the list you have in front of you which partition that is. It'll be the exact size which you shrunk, so go ahead and select that partition. Hit yes. Now we're going to configure that partition, so select free space. Create a new partition. This needs to be double the size of your current RAM, so I'm going to select 8 GB. Select primary, beginning, use as swap area. Done setting up that part of the partition. Select the remaining free space, create a partition, leave this as the remaining that it has left. Select primary, so leave that as ext4 journaling file system. Done setting up the partition, finish partitioning and write changes to disk. Select yes. Now that Kali isn't finished installing, select yes to use a network mirror. Leave the HTTP proxy information blank, click continue. It's now going to retrieve some files and configure apt. The next thing we need to do is configure the Grub bootloader. So the Grub bootloader needs to be installed on the same hard drive as your current host operating system. Host operating system meaning your main system which boots when you switch the machine on. To explain a little about what Grub is essentially a bootloader package. It allows you to select which operating system you wish to boot from. So hit yes. The next thing you need to do is select which device you want to install Grub to. So please select your main hard drive and hit continue. That's going to now install the Grub bootloader. When you're prompted with this screen, please remove the USB and hit continue. It's now going to finish the installation. Once the installation is complete, it's going to reboot your machine and you should see the Grub bootloader. So you'll have to be quick when selecting between Kali Linux and your host operating system. When it's rebooted, you should be greeted with this screen. As I'm in a VirtualBox environment, it's only showing me Kali Linux, but you should have the option between Kali and another operating system, whichever one you have installed. So just select Kali Linux and move on to the next video.